Today is November 21st, year 2017. It's a little after 9. This is the regular meeting of the Taos County Board of Commissioners. We welcome you all for being here today. I hereby call this meeting to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Chairman Pembroke.
Present.
Commissioner Romero.
Present.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Present.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Present.
Everyone would please stand, and I'd like to welcome Pastor Steve Wired from the El Pueblito Methodist Church, and he's also the director of the Share Table, and he had some words to start off our meeting this morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, commissioners and others in the public. I appreciate the opportunity, and I mentioned to Candace that as director of Share Table, we distribute food commodities in our community and in the county twice a month, all year long. And tomorrow we'll be busy along with other churches and organizations, probably 500 to 600 people every 2 weeks. That's 10% of the town, almost, every couple of weeks. So I'm glad to be of help, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I would ask if we all might be in an attitude, in a moment of reflection, if we might. Great Spirit, another day, another meeting is here for us to gather and do the people's business. And especially in this week, to remember to give thanks. Can there be too many times to come together and give thanks? We think not. And yet in the midst of busy lives, teach us how to slow down and count our friends, our blessings, and our special moments. We often yearn for slow country-like roads, and yet so often we seem to be driving on a freeway that produces rage and anxiety rather than compassion and serenity. As a nation and as individuals, we are called to hear the echo of a voice that yearns for us to be calm and enjoy our moments, alone and with those we care about. Give us guidance and direction. Help us to remember those who are less fortunate. And all these things we lift up hope. Amen.
Thank you. Sheriff Holder, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Romero.
Maybe have a moment of silence. I don't know how many people in this room know, but Mr. Trujillo passed away yesterday, I understand.
Oh, wow.
And so we could have a moment of silence for him, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Law, former Senator, Steve Trujillo, did a lot for this town. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Commissioners, if you will go to page 2 under the consent agenda, item 8B. There's a slight revision to the one that was included in our packet. Leandro will show us the new one at that time, so I ask that that be placed as a separate item after the consent agenda before the next business comes on. So we will be removing B from the consent agenda, and we can go ahead and do that now. Just insert it at the end. It's the only change I recommend.
If that's the only change, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and move to approve the agenda for today's meeting of November 21st as amended.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the amended agenda. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Yes. Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Yes.
Chairman Pembroke.
Yes. Okay, item 5 is the good part usually of our meetings here, and we got some really nice things here. How are you? First, item A is a presentation awarding Taos County Employee of the Month for November 2017. This will be presented to Brenda Zamora. She's our Adult Detention Lieutenant. Nelson and Anissa.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners.
The Employee Action Committee gets nominations every month for employees. We have 2 from the same department today, one, because we did fill one with, Anyway, so Brenda's going to be the Employee of the Month, and then Shane's going to be after that. So I'm going to let Nelson talk about Brenda.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. With great pleasure, I'd like to speak on behalf of Lieutenant Zamora. She's been employed with Taos County Adult Detention for approximately 6 years. In those 6 years, Lieutenant Zamora has moved up the chain, as we say in corrections, from officer to sergeant to corporal to sergeant to lieutenant. Lieutenant Zamora has displayed nothing but dedication for Taos County Adult Detention. More so, the staff for Taos County Adult Detention have recognized her. Not only have they, but I believe myself and the county manager have recognized Lieutenant Zamora. In many cases, because of the past history that Taos County has had, Lieutenant Zamora has had to defend a lot of litigations, a lot of tort claims that were existing. As a result of that, I have received numerous emails from different investigators through the Association of Counties that have actually recognized Lieutenant Zamora for a job well done. In saying that, Lieutenant Zamora, again, has been very instrumental, and I would definitely, with great pleasure, like to give this to Lieutenant Zamora. Lieutenant.
Commissioners and the staff here and everybody from Taos County, I'd like to thank you for this award. It's a very thankless job that we do, and I just want to thank everybody that's here because what we do behind those 4 walls isn't easy, and I'd like to support my staff in everything that we do. So thank you very much for the support. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go ahead and go to item C, if that's okay, Commissioners, since Nelson's already up there.
Okay.
And this is a certificate of recognition presented to Shane Burton of the Adult Detention Center. He's a sergeant.
So, Commissioner, I'm going to let my operations lieutenant go ahead and give this.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you for allowing me to be here to present this award to Shane. It is a great pleasure that the Taos County Administration Team is recognizing you for your superior job and efforts on October 8th, in which you saved the life of a detainee while on duty. You responded without hesitation and conducted yourself professionally in order to carry on your job duties, which resulted in saving a life. Your leadership as a sergeant has not gone unnoticed. You continue to fulfill your duties as an employee to keep the safety and security of the facility. We appreciate your efforts and leadership and the guidance you assist your coworkers with your knowledge and experience. We will continue to support and assist you with your growth as a sergeant in any way we can.
Thank you, Commissioners, for this award, and I couldn't have done it without my supervisors, Paul and Nelson, and Bennett. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and get a picture of the last 2 recipients, and then we will go ahead with item B. Wear the right color today.
Commissioners, if we just stay here. If we just stay here, the next item. Thank you.
Item B is recognition of Deputy Sylvia Trujillo Chacon for outstanding service negotiating with a barricaded subject. I personally have seen this deputy in a professional light with a very troubled youth one time when we were at All Things Little League, and she handled that. So this doesn't surprise me at all, Sheriff.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners, honored guests. We appreciate everyone being here today. And yes, I do have a letter of recognition that we'll be presenting to Deputy Sylvia Trujillo Chacon this morning. But first, just a couple of months ago, I came before Commission to ask for out-of-state travel so that Deputy Trujillo Chacon could attend a crisis negotiation training in Arizona and out-of-state that required approval. I would like to say that she's in recognition of this award today before she has even got to go to the formal training on that. I could not be more proud, and I felt that this an incident that happened, deserved more than the traditional pat on the back and good job that we do around the office, and I wanted to recognize it in the community. So I'll read this letter of recognition. For service set forth in the following. For outstanding performance while on duty and serving the Taos County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Sylvia Trujillo Chacon on November 13th, 2017, responded to a family violence call. During the evolution of the call, a potentially dangerous situation arose in which Deputy Sylvia Trujillo Chacon showed great restraint while negotiating with an armed, barricaded subject and talked him into surrendering his weapon for his own safety, the safety of his family, and of the other responding deputies. Deputy Sylvia Trujillo Chacon's courageous and loyal devotion reflects great credit on herself and has upheld the highest traditions of the Taos County Sheriff's Office. Signed by myself and Under Sheriff Steve Vienna. So yeah, I could not be more proud to present this to you today. And along with that, a Taos County Sheriff's Office challenge coin, which these are not a trading document or item within our office. These have to be earned by recognizable performance. And it's my honor to present you with that as well.
Thank you, everybody. I want to thank everybody that's part of my crew. I couldn't have done this without them. It's not just me. I had a lot of help from the guys that I work with and also the individual's brother. I just thank you guys all for giving me the opportunity to be in this type of career that I can put myself out there to help our community because it is a team thing. We all need to help each other. You don't need to be in law enforcement to step up and help. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm not good at it, so we have pictures of them on YouTube. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Taos County has some truly great employees, every one of them, and we're fortunate to have the employees that we have. Next item on the agenda is citizens' concerns. Any citizen wishing to address the commission should limit their time to 5 minutes or less. And We invite you to speak on something. If you can't be here for later in the meeting, you need to comment on something, or if it's just something that you need to address the commission on, now is your time. Hearing none, seeing none, we thank you all for being here, and we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. Item 7 is the approval. First item is item A, approval of the October 17, 2017 regular commission meeting minutes. Commissioners?
Motion to approve. I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second to approve the October 17, 2017 regular commission meeting minutes. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes. Item B is approval of the November 7, 2017 regular commission meeting minutes. Commissioners?
Motion to approve. I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the November 7, 2017 regular commission meeting minutes. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Next item, item 8, is our consent agenda. I will read the consent agenda, the 2 items listed, and then would entertain one vote to pass both. If you have any discussion, Commissioners, please let us know and we'll pull it and put it after item B. Item A is approval of a budget adjustment for our Human Resources Department. This would be presented by Luther Martinez, our Finance Director, and Ms. Renee Weber, our HR Director. Item C is approval of the resolution 2017-50. This is a resolution accepting the donation of a 3.075 acre tract on Herdner Road near the intersection of US Highway 68, located within the boundaries of the town of Taos from the New Mexico Department of Transportation. I entertain a motion for approval of items A and C.
So moved, Chairman.
Second. Okay, motion and a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes. Okay, next item of business will be the item pulled from the consent agenda. This is approval of the MOU between Taos County and the NCRTD, North Central Regional Transit District, otherwise known as the Blue Bus, to provide transit service in Taos County and to provide a central place in the areas served for the NCRTD drivers to park their transit vehicles when starting and stopping work.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the reason I asked to take this off consent, there was a few changes suggested by Peter Dwyer, the legal counsel for NCRTE. The biggest changes were in compensation. They agreed to a $3,000 amount, not a $3,500 amount, so that was changed. And then the next biggest change was under termination. They are asking that if we terminate this agreement within the 4 years, that we would pay them back the $3,000. The $3,000 is meant to be used for security cameras at our Canasco yard in order to provide better security for not just their bus, but for our equipment as well. And then the county is also committed to looking at gates for that property in order to have better security. The rest of it should be the same as what was in your packet. Next time for any questions.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the MOU between Taos County and North Central Regional Transit District to provide transit service in Taos County and provide a central place in the areas for the drivers to park their transit vehicles.
I'll go ahead and second, Mr. Chairman.
And the second. Mr. Cordova.
One more point of clarity, I apologize for not mentioning it sooner. Under item 4, obligations of NCRTE, B, letter B, we left blank at the end of that paragraph. Such payment shall be made on a one-time lump sum basis. County shall make best efforts to install the system prior to, that's blank until we have an idea from the contractor, the vendor that we're going to use when they can come out and install the cameras. So that will be filled in hopefully within the next couple of days, and we know when we can get that work done.
So I'll amend my agenda to include, I'll amend my motion to include authorization to fill in that blank.
Commissioner Romero? Still second?
Yes, that makes sense.
So we have an amended motion with a little clarity, so we'll require one vote on item B. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blakenhart?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Item 9 under department matters. Item A is approval of the Taos County employee work rules and regulations. This will be presented by Mr. Cordova, and Ms. Weber is in the audience as well if we had any questions for her regarding this. Mr. Cordova.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, once again, kind of a reminder of the process that we're undertaking here in changing our personnel policies. Last meeting, you guys did rescind the old ordinance, approve the new ordinance, and the resolution of the personnel policies that will go into effect December 7th. These Taos County employee work rules and regulations, based on the merit ordinance, the manager is allowed to be able to implement work rules. I am bringing it to the board for discussion, and so that we can have, other input as well. We do not need to necessarily pass these today, but they will need to be passed by December 7th when the other resolution takes effect. So at this time, I stand for any questions. I believe we handed these out with plenty of time for the commissioners to go over it, and I believe there are probably questions for me and for Ms. Weber, so I stand for those questions at this time.
I would like to see a change in the employee dress. I feel it's a little gender biased by restricting female employees to not wear jeans. I don't see anything wrong with, as long as they're appropriate jeans, not cut, frayed, and otherwise, I don't see why our employees couldn't wear jeans. And I also feel that if we're going to require them to have different wardrobe, then we need to open our pocketbook and pay for that, and I know we can't do that. So if we're requiring something of them, we've got to provide, in my opinion. And so I don't see anybody abusing the jeans policy to where it's offensive or anything like that. I think our employees take a lot of pride in how they present themselves.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, point well taken. I do understand the concern of the employees. Our attempt was just to kind of create a more professional work environment where our customers knew the difference between who's serving them and who's standing right next to them. But I do agree that when jeans are worn that are in good taste, that are not, ripped or too big, or they fit properly, I guess that could be a compromise that we could really take into account. Ultimately, though, I agree that I don't feel like there's much abuse necessarily by employees, but the attempt was, like I said, to try and get us on a more professional standard. And I guess if the commission feels that jeans can provide that professionalism, I can compromise.
Okay. That was my main concern. Commissioners, anything? Commissioner Blakenhart?
I like the initiative. I think the rules are well written. I'm happy with the gene change. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, on page 2817A, regarding allowing employees to bring children, I would like to see some kind of emergency clause there that would read something like, in the event of an extreme unexpected weather event or emergency, to allow staff to bring their children and set a time limit, say no more than an hour, pending approval. I think we just need to allow that in case there are unexpected emergencies and some weather events. So I would ask the commission to consider that emergency clause, given the county manager does it on a case-by-case basis.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, as I mentioned at the last meeting, I do feel like we can give a lot of flexibility to parents and the ability to, if needed, stay home to address any childcare issues. If it is a weather event, I would prefer that they would stay home with their children rather than trying to bring them out on the roads and bringing them to our office. There's a lot more liability in a weather event, not just for our own staff, but for the children. Ice outside, slip and falls, all the other concerns that I have. Really, the ultimate goal of these work rules are to help keep us insurable. And at NMAC, multi-line, there's a lot of concern, a lot of issues, and it's getting tougher and tougher for them as our insured to continue to insure all of the counties. This, in my mind, is an essential work rule that needs to be adopted, and it already is in place. Actually, the old policies are basically the same as what we're implementing with the new rule. It's a liability issue, and it's also, in my mind, creates a discriminatory factor if we can't allow it in other departments. So not being able to allow the sheriff or EMS or detention to have that luxury, it creates a discriminatory factor in my mind that could cause us more problems and liability down the road. So I still feel like I have to stand firm with no children at work.
I just kind of have an opinion on that too, and I don't know, Jason, if you've got anything you want to add, but with the, hopefully it never happens to us. I would hate for any violence in the workplace to happen, and that'd be terrible all the way around, but to know that children could possibly be involved really bothers me a lot. Mr. Blackmore.
Thank you, Chairman. I wondered, Leandro, does NMAC specifically recommend against it in terms of liability?
Commissioner Blankenhorn and our managers affiliated did come up. I actually brought this issue to light as well, and no, they would not like to see that liability exposed. They would prefer to see the policy stated clearly that it's not allowed because of the liability that's put in place. And it's a third-party liability that they may or may not be able to cover. And they mentioned that as well. So if we're bringing children to work and something happens that's outside of the scope of work by the employee that brought them, there may not be coverage for that liability.
And in thinking in my time with the multi-line pool, I can already see the checks that we send out on that. I could just see this as being one, as he said, I'm almost certain we would not be covered.
Mr. Chairman, one more point that I'd like to mention. I understand the need occasionally to have to handle a child care situation, but I also want the board to know I get as many complaints and concerns about having the children in work from other employees that feel distracted or that feel they may not be able to, perform at their highest rate and level because of the distraction of the children in the workplace. So I am also trying to address that as well.
Mr. Chairman, we want to make a decision today, including the amendment concerning blue jeans, or black jeans.
Green jeans, Mr. Green jeans. Since this is something that the manager has the authority to do, but it is set up for approval, I guess, we can tell them that regarding the dress code, that it be opened up a little bit more. And I guess because this is the way we set this up where he can change it, I have a multi-line meeting the 13th and 14th. I'll bring the question up and bring that back. This is something that he and Ms. Weber can change it at any time, provided they get notice to the employees and stuff. So, but I will specifically ask in my multi-line meeting in December, and I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is going to be, but so if we could recommend to the manager that he and Ms. Weber enforce these with the change in the dress code that we recommended.
Well, in that case, Chairman, if we don't have to approve any changes that they make going forward, I think I'll just make a motion to approve the work rules and regulations so that we get our chance to give it our stamp of approval
I'll go ahead and second, Mr. Chairman.
And that,
And I have discussion, Mr. Chairman.
okay, let me clarify the motion, please, Commissioner, and then I'll go to you right after. So that would be with the dress code revision that I recommend.
Yes.
Okay? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, I did have a question. We all know that whatever we write in emails are not private. And there is language that says the county manager has the authority to go in and look at people's emails and listen to their voice messages. How is that done? How can you access someone's account if they have a password? How is that done?
Vice President, are you speaking to Commissioner? If I may?
I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. It's the provision on communication, and that it's county-owned.
Everything that's done on a public system is property of Taos County. So the privacy illusion that an employee may think that they have, they don't. Because when they are acting in their official capacity as an employee of the county, and they're utilizing that email for personal use, that belongs to the county, and therefore the county has rights to take care of it if they need to. They also have rights to submit it to IFRA requests if necessary.
And I understand that, and I don't disagree with that. My question is, how does the county manager get into someone's email?
He would have to utilize IT to do so. IT has complete and full access of everything that happens in our network.
And also, what might be helpful is to put a disclaimer on everyone's email that says, this email may be open to public inspection.
That's a good suggestion.
And I know I'm working on getting that done with IT. And if there was some language that could be developed that all county employees used when they sent out emails, I think that makes people more civil, constituents perhaps more civil, when they're getting a comment they don't like, and they see that what they say will be open for possible public inspection. I think that's a good policy. I think it also reminds staff that they need to be careful what they say.
I would tend to agree. I do understand that our IT director is in the process of working on some form of an operations policy, and that would probably be the best place for your suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just on that note, the best rule of thumb is never write anything in any email unless you want Larry Barker and your mother to see it. So just that's the test.
He's still around, huh? Anything else, Ms. Weber?
Nothing else?
Okay, commissioners? So we do have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair,
Sheriff Wilbur.
is it too late for me to speak regarding the work rules?
Come on up. You do know there's already a motion and a second.
Yes, I do. I certainly do, and perhaps nothing needs to be changed at the moment. I just want to speak on behalf of an employee who works for me in my office about the child care situation. And the question was posed, well, what about an early release from school? Would it not be okay that they come and spend 15, 25 minutes, whatever, until I can make arrangements to finish my work and go home? I just want to bring that up, that maybe, just maybe, it's worth considering, a case-by-case basis with approval by the person's immediate supervisor, county manager, or deputy manager, or whomever, on those case-by-case basis. And I speak up just for that employee. My personal feeling is, yeah, kids in the workplace, generally not a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blakenher?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes. Thank you all, very good comments. And thank you, Ms. Weber, for your work and Mr. Cordova on this. We appreciate it.
want to thank Ms. Weber as well, and all of the HR staff for all the hard work they put into these.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10 is resolutions and ordinances. Item A is approval of resolution 2017-56. This is a resolution by the Taos County Board of Commissioners to support the national initiative and encourage all county officials, employees, and residents to participate in the Rural Impact County Challenge. This will be presented by our lieutenant, this will be presented by our manager, Mr. Cordova.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, unfortunately, Lieutenant Montoya had to do a transport this morning up to TA, and Mrs. Jaramillo is stuck in a meeting right now, so I'm going to do my best to go ahead and present this on their behalf. But basically, the Rural Impact Challenge Community Coaching Program seeks to recognize and support counties making real differences in the lives of children in rural communities. NACO has partnered with county health rankings and roadmaps to offer tailored assistance from a community coach to selected RICC counties. The selected county teams will also be able to connect with each other and form a close network of rural counties who are carrying out similar work. So this is basically a commitment to really work on the lives of our youth and do what we can to impact the lives of our youth in a positive way. It also potentially can open up funding sources for us down the road, not just for the youth that are incarcerated in a detention center, but just any program in general that's supporting youth development. So I'm not sure if the Chairman would like me to read the entire resolution. I can, and that may answer more questions, or I stand for questions if you...
I've reviewed it. I have no issues with the resolution. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution 2017-56.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Motion and a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes. Okay, item 11, under contracts, agreements, MOUs, and bids. Item A is approval of professional services contract TCC 2017-124. This is a contract between Taos County and Robles, Rayola, and Anaya to provide consulting regarding top-of-the-world litigation. Mr. Cordova.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the award for the RFP was presented last meeting. The board approved the award. This is the contract that has been negotiated with Robles, Rael, and Anaya. Our point on this is Marcus Rael, who will be leading the litigation. Mr. Audio is still in his capacity with us, and they're completely separate. And I just wanted to make that point clear that any correspondence on top of the world will go through myself over to Mr. Rael. So the first step in this, if the contract is approved, the firm will be taking a good look at the case, doing a full analysis, and coming back to present to the board with their recommendations as we go forward. Because they're new to the case, it does seem like a fair way to approach that. Let them take a good look at it, do their analysis, and see what their recommendations are for this board, and see if they are consistent with our previous council, or if they may have suggestions for different direction for us. The total amount of the contract at this time is $150,000 with alerts at certain intervals so that we are aware of the billing as it proceeds. And I stand for any questions.
I'm just surprised Marcus still works. I didn't know that guy would be.
He was unable to make it here today, but would be available potentially by phone later on in the meeting if there's any major questions, or if you have any other major questions, I certainly can convey those and pass them on to him.
Commissioners, Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Thank you, Chairman. Leandro, did Marcus give you any estimate of how much the initial review would take of the contract?
The initial review, a few $1,000s probably in order to really get a good analysis of the case and see how they would recommend going forward. And that was his commitment, was to take a good look at it, come back and talk to the board before really diving in deep and doing what would most likely bill out most of the amount. So first step would be really doing a deep analysis and coming back to present to the board.
And is there any time estimate on when he might make his report to us after having done his initial investigation?
We didn't talk specifics on time. However, the case is still ongoing with deadlines looming, so as soon as he has a contract, I think that's what he's waiting for. He will definitely do the analysis quickly, and I will talk to him about getting back before the board as soon as possible.
And I did read it, but I can't recall the language, but there is language in there in the event that Taos County doesn't have the need to spend the entire $150,000. There's an easy out, as I recall.
Yes. Yes, that was something I had asked for, pushed for. I do hope that maybe we get a different analysis and we get different advice, and if we, as a board, decide to take that advice and move in a different direction, then we should have an opportunity to get out if that's the will of the board. And so that was important to do.
Thank you.
I applaud the idea of having the analysis first, because I think there's a lot of questions that will be answered in Ben and his professional service on this, so it may give us a better picture of what's going on out there, since it seems to change all the time. Pleasure of the commission.
Motion to approve professional service contract 2017-124 between Taos County and Globe Israel and I.
We're talking about. Do I hear a second?
I'll go with the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Blackmore.
Yeah, discussion. I've opposed the county's pursuance of the appeal, but I am pleased with the selection of this law firm, and I do look forward to their advice. I after having reviewed the case, and so I am going to support the contract. Thank you.
Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blakenher?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Pembroke?
Yes. All right. Guess we can get some work out of that. Item 12, under County Manager's Report Matters. First will be the 2017 NMAC Annual Conference Accounting Report.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Anissa's handing out the accounting for the NMAC as requested by Commissioner O'Donnell. It basically runs through the revenue, the expenditures on the first page, revenues on the second, and then I think there's a mention of some of the yet to be collected commitments that we have not received, and that would primarily be from the Taos Mountain Casino. That required a little bit more paperwork in regards to their gaming requirements and that kind of thing. So for the most part, we have not received any additional billing from the country club. We feel that we are paid in full, and staff, any questions?
Anything, Commissioners?
No, just Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this to us.
Just a quick note, you may see on a couple of the revenue line items, there were a few donors that wished to be anonymous, and so that's why it says that specifically. We granted their wish on that, so if you have any further questions or detail, I'd be happy to answer that. But those vendors did ask for discretion. Great job. All right. Thank you. Moving on, I do have a little bit of a list for my manager's report for today. The first topic I'd like to discuss is our historic county courthouse and the idea of how to move forward from this point. As I mentioned in the last meeting, we're getting close to a good point with our architect that we can probably bring in a contractor to help us start understanding our price estimates per phase. And so we have a couple opportunities and options to do that. Much like the facility build model we're using for the senior building, we can potentially use a contractor that's on a CES contract, or we can go out to bid as a traditional RFP model. Both have advantages and disadvantages. The RFP model does take a lot longer, and it does create a bit of a issue when you have to have a sample contract that we're tied to at the end. It does also push out our ability to better estimate each phase. If we bring in a contractor and a CES contract, we will have them available to finish and complete the architectural design with their input and the ability to have a better idea, a solid number per phase. We talked to the architect at length at this point. He could go either way, but based on timing, his recommendation would be to go with a CES contractor so that we can get that contractor in to take a look at their plans as they stand and see when we can get to that next phase, or to create the first phase, a true phase. I have asked for that phase to be pretty comprehensive. Besides the ADA issues that we have to address, if there are any other extremely outstanding issues, leaks in the roof, structural problems, I would like that to be part of phase one and have a true idea, a true picture of what that cost would be. If we do need to ask for more money from the general fund, I'd be willing to come before the board and ask you for that money to complete that phase. It's something that we talked about in the budget preparation. It is available in our reserves, and I just need a good contractor to work with the architect to give me that solid number so we could come back and commit those funds. It's very important to me that we get a complete phase done and have some progress shown. A lot of what is being proposed in phase one is really kind of behind the scenes stuff, and truthfully we're not going to get a lot of what's the curb appeal maybe just in phase one, but we'll definitely get a lot of extended use of the building, improvements to the building, and obviously those ADA issues will be addressed. So, Commissioner Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any idea how much will be available in reserve for situations like this?
We have the loan proceeds that were put aside plus our capital appropriations of roughly $750,000. When you back out the contract for the architect, that leaves us with roughly $500,000. I think we talked about $250 to $400 in reserves at this time. If it happens to be more, we'll analyze what we're able to do, and I'll come back with a recommendation one way or the other for the board. I would not like to put a stall on this project just because we're short $100,000 that may be in the bank and to us. So if it's a suggestion of $1 million phase one and we're halfway there, I will definitely look at what's needed to make a good, strong recommendation to the board to get that done. We've put too much time, effort, and energy into this to let $100,000 or $200,000 that's available in our reserves stop us from proceeding to the next step.
Not only that, Mr. Chairman, it's taken a good 20 years at least to get to this point, and it would be nice to get it done.
I agree.
We're getting there.
Right. So that's not for a decision today, that's just some discussion. I did want to hear from the board if you have any major concerns about using a CES contractor going forward, because as I said, that does give me a better cost estimate sooner, and then we could get into construction sooner. With that CES contractor, we could be looking at beginning construction in springtime, March, April, May at the latest.
Mr. Chairman, it would be good to see a timeline, Leandro, from start to finish, and what we expect to get done.
Okay. I'll continue to pursue that with options of CES or RFP. Like I mentioned, the RFP does add usually 2 months to anything just because of the process of an RFP. Putting it out for 30 days, the review of the bids, all of that. Paperwork is usually at 60 days to the time frame.
I think, Mr. Chairman, what we have to look at also is how is remodeling or construction going to affect the surrounding businesses at the old courthouse, and we have to get the work done, get the job done, but at the same time also take into consideration how it could affect negatively any of the surrounding businesses on the plaza. We need to take that into utmost consideration, making sure that it doesn't happen.
Understood. Thank you for that. And it would be easier with a contractor on board to help us understand what that impact truly will be. The architect can go so far, but with the contractor understanding the true ramifications of the work, I think that's important for us to have him on board then to be able to start that conversation. So we can explain to the neighbors what we're doing and when and at what time.
Maybe even a meeting with the businesses.
Okay.
Or anyone interested in that, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. How many CES construction businesses are, contractors are on that CES list. Do you have any idea? And how would you select one of them without doing an RFP?
I can't give you an exact number. I think there's at least 3 or 4 that the county has used here locally. There's a couple others that are available outside of our market, in Las Vegas, Santa Fe, or Albuquerque. I would like to meet with them. If we were going to make that choice, I'd like to meet with 3 or 4, probably at the suggestion of the architect, and kind of gauge them at that point and start talking about their experience, looking at their past performances, and go that route. Similar to the RFP, but more of a bid, looking at, pricing it out, apples to apples.
And then, Mr. Chairman, I think our architect had said he was going to have a final design ready that could be presented to the public, or at least kind of inform the plaza area merchants what's going to happen. Could you find out where that is so we could get that soon?
We're near that point. The architect had set up a meeting with us a couple weeks ago to talk about this idea of involving a contractor at this point, which would help him finalize this with, like I said, the real world ideas and concerns of the contractor. So with such a historical building, he feels it's very important to have someone kind of help guide us to that final document. So.
But would he be able to provide those drawings of the revisions we asked for? I think that's more what I'm looking for.
I think that's possible. In fact, I believe that the latest drawings we had seem to encompass all of the requests from the board. So I'll look at that, and if
we could get copies.
If that's the most recent, I'll forward those.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Yeah, just to go back to choosing the contractor, the architect's going to play a big role in that, obviously, in advising our manager on the choice.
I agree. I do appreciate that their recommendations would be someone that they've probably worked with, someone that they've had a good relationship with in the past, and someone they've probably had a successful project with. And so I do agree with that. So if there's no more questions on that topic, I'll move on to the landfill board meeting we had last week. We did have a meeting and once again discussed recycling, and that was a big discussion point. We talked a lot about it again, and it kind of seemed that this may be a subject for myself and Mr. Bellis to really sit down and kind of work out most of the details if we can. It wasn't clear whether it's an actual landfill issue or not. The landfill does not run the recycling center, and therefore, it seems to be apples to oranges. So the commitment was to sit down with Mr. Bellis and the town staff to really work at looking at better numbers. I also did have concerns that we didn't really get our questions answered from the last presentation, and I know Commissioner Blankenhorn asked some specific questions, so I've been tasked with going back to gather exactly what those questions were and send them on to the town again for another attempt to be answered. So that's where we're at with at this time of the recycling center.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. That was why I had suggested at some point we have our own work study with solid waste. I don't know if they have numbers as to the amount of glass that the county collects, not the town. And that's why I thought having those numbers would be helpful. And I'm talking specifically about glass and how much the town collects in glass. And as I had sent you an email, there is a facility in Colorado, in Broomfield, that is recycling glass only for the bottling companies, the beer bottling companies. And when I reached out, asked if there was any possible way that the county could get involved in sending the glass, they had offered a possible part of a transportation cost. So I'm just saying it would be nice if that could be explored further. It's about a 900-mile round trip to Broomfield, but if you calculate how much we're taking out of the landfill, the tonnage cost, maybe it would just even out. Maybe it wouldn't, but it'd be nice to see those numbers. Plus, for me, the public image that we have, if we just start throwing all the glass into the landfill, when I think we have an obligation to the planet to do whatever we can to recycle. So those were a couple of my ideas as how we might be able to deal with the recycling. And that would mean, would that be once a year we go up there? Is it twice a year? But we need to know the numbers from solid waste as to how much glass they're collecting.
Well, and the transportation of that, Commissioner, is a lot easier, and maybe Commissioner Gallegos knows a little bit more. He deals with some of this stuff, but they pulverize the glass. I mean, it makes it, we saw the effects of it at the meeting, and the town's been pulverizing, and they just had too much stockpile and nothing to do with it. So if that were possible, that thing in Broomfield, I'm really surprised that, French is a pretty intelligent guy. I'm pretty sure he would have looked into that if it was cost effective. They'd be doing it because he doesn't know what to do with all those mountains of glass that he has. I mean, he has, do you remember how many tons they estimated?
I don't remember all, it's a big number. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Is it an environmental issue that you can't put them on dirt roads?
I don't know that answer, Commissioner.
So it's pulverized, it's not giving them free.
I don't know if it's so much an environmental issue as it is a quality of product issue, but I can look into that. I don't have an answer.
I mean, it's almost powder.
Yeah.
Right, I've seen that in it. One of the things that you're going to encounter, Commissioners, unless you have the way it gets transported, whether it's going to be in its bottle form, or they pulverize it, or it gets pulverized, sacked here, and then taken out, you're taking roughly 16 to 20 tons on a flatbed trailer. For it to be cost effective for the trucking company, they'd have to find a load to come back down from Broomfield down. If not, going up one way and coming back empty is going to cost, a couple $1,000. So, that's one of the things that you have to set up. And then if you're only doing one load, maybe if you're doing one load a year or 2 loads a year, that might be something that a trucking company might be able to fit in the schedule, or load contract or whatever. But I think those are numbers that could be thrown out there. My question has always been, why couldn't they be put on people's driveways or on county roads? I don't know.
I'll look into that further. Thank you for that. And I'll also take the Commissioner Ronald's questions with me to the meeting.
And I think the glass has to be intact because they separate the colors of this facility. If you were to Google momentum,
labor cost to it, so there's no way it's going to be cost effective.
Momentum recycling. But the fact is, if they were to pay a portion of the transportation costs and all the government entities paid a portion, then it could be cost effective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Romero.
So, Mr. Chairman, who handles the recycling idea at this point? Is it the town of Taos on their own, or is it the landfill board? It used to be the landfill. It's the town.
It's the town. It's always been the town.
How come the landfill, the IGC, doesn't take that on and manage it better?
There's that discussion.
And also with regards to the powderized glass, I have seen where it's used a few years back when the idea first came to Taos, and a lot of people on that private dirt road ended up with flat tires all the time. I don't know if it's now diluted to the point where it's almost a powder.
There still can be some chunks.
Yeah, and that's what affects tires. So,
good points. Thank you for that discussion. That'll help me in my meeting with Mr. Velez.
it's not safe to be putting in a children's play box at a park. I would imagine that it's not safe for a road either.
That was the 7 point when they first came out.
But it was safe for children's play box.
Like sand.
My kids won't play at that park.
Same thing with rubber tires. It's not the safest thing.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Yeah, real quick, I mean, on the full glass, it all depends on how much those bottles are worth to them, you know, and so it would be interesting to know.
Stop using bottles, stop using glass.
Plastic.
And plastic.
And aluminum. Go ahead, Mr. Corbett.
Okay, so right after the landfill board meeting, we had an IGC meeting, so an update on the IGC that a lot of the discussion at this IGC meeting was the idea of a collaborative economic development group and economic development plan. And also, honestly, a big discussion was whether or not the IGC should be that vehicle to do that. And so some of the discussion was the IGC's original intent was not really economic development. They were more of a legislative body that reinforced legislative priorities of the members. And so the discussion was a good discussion, certainly went a long way and all agreed that a collaborative approach on economic development is the right way to move forward, but there was not a final determination on whether the IGC is that vehicle. So the request from the IGC was to have a meeting of the managers and mayors and talk about the direction each of us are looking to go and how, you know, each of us would want to participate and be able to contribute to that consensus, the collaborative approach. So that'll be the next step. And after that meeting, we committed to go back to the IGC in January and continue the discussion and see where we're at with that. So it was a good discussion. A lot of people were present, a lot of the entities were present, and I think we all, like I said, agreed on collaboration being the most effective use of our dollars and our resources. So that was what we definitely agreed upon. So.
I do have a question for legal regarding that. I am the vice chair of the IGC. I could not attend, but the last email that the chairman sent out was supporting the airport, that would be first place to look at regional economic development. Now, given our current status of pending lawsuits, is that something the county could endorse or not because of the pending lawsuit?
I asked them to not have the discussion with me being in the meeting, and they acknowledged that, and they left it alone.
So, am I just, from Mr. Audio, am I to assume that that is something we cannot endorse at this point, given the pending litigation?
Yeah, and I apologize, I'm not aware of everything going on that I've heard of it, but it is something that you should be cautious of while that's pending, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I did ask them to just not discuss it in mine, since I was at the meeting.
But yes, that was the other big topic of discussion was regional airports and how to move forward on that. A lot of, it seemed like the will of the group to look at the regional approach. And so we certainly don't want to close the door on that, but I have the same concerns and Chairman had the same concerns, so we'll continue to walk carefully as we go forward. Next, wanted to talk about work study topics and dates going forward. One of the Commissioner O'Donnell brought up the idea of a work study for solid waste. That's an idea we've talked about in the past. We also talked about work studies for animal control. And I would like to, as we get into the springtime, have a few work studies regarding strategic planning and budget prep. So with that being said, I just kind of wanted to give the board a heads up and talk to you about the idea of moving forward and when you best like to see work studies. We have a work study this afternoon at 1 o'clock. I feel like in the past we kind of made the most out of a meeting day and a work study the same day. If you're okay with that, I'd like to continue with that kind of schedule, and you'll start seeing more of these work studies probably January. It is a short session, so we may wait till the session's over, but I definitely want to have a few work studies heading into the springtime where we can really talk about our budget and our priorities and get everybody's thoughts and concerns out there so that we can move forward. As we work on things like our compensation plan, there's going to be a lot of new things that I'm going to bring to the board, and new ideas and different maybe organizational structures for us to talk about, discuss, and that going forward. So if that works for the commission, we'll work that way. We'll try and keep our morning meetings as efficient as possible, kind of like today's, and we'll work on work studies in the afternoon and address most of the issues that have been coming up over the last few meetings that you want to see back in a work study environment.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to at some point see a LUR work study, given fast tracking maybe certain projects, how we can streamline business permits and not require people who want to start new businesses unnecessary paperwork and unnecessary things. I still want to bring back the abandoned structures. I know it was suggested by a previous attorney that it's a separate ordinance, but I still think at some point we need to have on the books abandoned structure for those really severe situations that pose a health and safety hazard. And I also would like to find out the status of how we can solve the problem of all those lots in a certain commissioner's district. Those lots that are just a big headache.
Carson Estates.
Yeah, Carson Estates, all that. If there's any way we could, what was the word? Make them contiguous. So I think it's kind of important that we kind of look at some of those, the language of the LUR.
We're definitely moving on that. We've had a lot of those discussions. We met with Mr. Hill, myself, and Mr. Audio last week to talk about that timeline. So they have a lot of ideas for changes on the LUR already that they'll be taking before the Planning Commission for their discussion and input, and then we will have a work study. So that's one of the other work studies I didn't get to mention, but we'll definitely be doing that, and probably one of the first ones in January. I think planning staff's pretty much ready.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next idea or topic. I was able to attend a presentation last Monday in Sandoval County on the need for a fire master plan, and to take a good look at a fire master plan that has been commissioned and put into place with Sandoval County. Myself and Chief Cordova attended. It was very beneficial for me to attend that. It was open to all counties and fire chiefs throughout the state. I think I was the only manager in the room, but for us, it was useful because Chief Cordova has been pushing this on me since he was hired. We certainly have a need for it. The $50,000 price tag that Sandoval County paid is a little out there for us at this time, so we're looking at all our options and how we can do things in-house that will, maybe complement the final product. But as interesting as it was, as important as it was, we're not quite there yet. We still have a little bit of preliminary work to get to the idea of commissioning a master plan. But I feel like we've come a very long way with Chief Cordova being on board, and I was very pleased to know that we are addressing so many of the issues. And he, as frustrated as he gets, feeling he hasn't moved enough, has come a very long way. So I have to reassure him that he's doing a great job. He's come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. So it was a great presentation, and I just wanted the board to know that he does have that way of thinking. He is looking for the long term while also addressing the short term issues. So that was a good presentation. The following day, I was able to attend the Lamo Regional Community Leaders Update at Northern New Mexico College in Espanola. The head or the director of the labs will be retiring. Charles McMillan will be retiring at the end of this year. So there was a lot of discussion about his future and the future of the labs. There was a couple new directors, managers that presented as well, and a lot of discussion on the upcoming contract change at the labs. That's the biggest elephant in the room for Northern New Mexico. The big concern being that currently it's a for-profit organization that pays GRT. The concern is if a nonprofit comes in that doesn't have to pay a GRT, what that would do to the erosion of the tax base, not just for Los Alamos County, but Rio Rivas and Taos. So there's been so much discussion at the state level. The legislature has in the past attempted to make a change statutorily so that there is a requirement that nonprofit or for-profit pay that tax. So that was a big part of the discussion. There's still a lot of questions that they couldn't answer about that. One thing I found interesting though is the environmental remediation side of the shop is going to be separated from the mission, the main mission of the labs. And so they're going to be doing a separate contract just for environmental that will be negotiated mid-federal fiscal year. So here in the next couple of months, they're going to take a big chunk of the contract and separate it out on just the environmental remediation side. So we will kind of have two different contracts going forward. What was promising was the budget looks to be flat and not increased over last year. So the federal budget for the labs is still strong. So that was a good meeting as well. It's amazing the impact of the labs throughout all of northern New Mexico. Los Alamos does not feel it alone. Rio Arriba definitely feels it, and Santa Fe does as well. And we do have plenty of people that drive every day from Taos up to Los Alamos. So it was important for us to hear that discussion. Another meeting I had last week was with Mr. Tony Valdez, our NMSU extension agent. He had been out on FMLA for a few months, he's back. And so we definitely discussed the noxious weed issue that had been presented to us. He has a few ideas, a few plans. We talked a lot about the use of our farm and range funds that the county collects from the federal government that is specifically used for things like pest control and noxious weeds. And so we have a balance of about $14,000 in that fund, and he has some good ideas moving forward. We'll also like to talk with Taos Soil and Water Conservation District, so we'll move forward with a meeting with them to see the best use of those funds. And so I was very pleased to have that meeting. It was promising, and he committed to a future work study on that as well. I met with, last Friday, we met with satellite tracking vendor for the tracking devices that we've been looking at over the last few months. We got a lot of information from the vendor, and the group that met decided to present this to the pretrial subcommittee that's part of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council for their input and discussion before we fully implement. But we feel like after that kind of discussion with all the key partners and stakeholders that we will be moving forward before the end of this fiscal year to implement some of those tracking devices. We do see that there could be some great, not just savings, but better quality of tracking, especially when it's related to domestic violence or cases where we need to have exclusionary zones for some of these individuals. If we bring this in-house with dispatch being under our umbrella and detention and sheriffs, we feel we could have quicker response times to some of these potential violations of extraterritorial zones for these DV, domestic violence violators. So it's not just about money. As we further explore this, we may have some savings, but it also will probably create a higher quality of tracking for us in our community. So we need to let the commission know that our health insurance rates are going to be increasing. When we moved over to Cigna a few years ago, we were able to negotiate a flat rate for that first year. This year we had a cap of 5%, which we're going to be seeing on January 1. Next year, though, we will need to be cognizant of all our options. It looks like we will go back out to the market and see what the market has because rates have gone up significantly. We looked at that this year. We always shop just to know what our options are, and it turned out locking in that 5% was a great move for the county because if we would have gone anywhere else, we're looking at 22 to 33% increase in rates. Going back to the state would be a 22% increase. So we're doing open enrollment this next week or within the next couple of weeks, and so our employees will see a slight increase. Most of it gets eaten up by the county because the county covers 90% of the employees' contribution. That 5% increase primarily impacts the county side of the contribution, but the employees will see a slight increase as well on their contribution, and especially when it comes to covering your family, your spouse, or that extra coverage, because we only pick up 70% of that. So that health insurance increase also extends to the commission. I wanted you guys to be aware of it. You may hear concerns from our employees. However, I'm grateful that we've had the foresight to lock in these rates. We've also been able to lock in the out-of-pocket costs for our employees at this time. So the state had increases to out-of-pocket. You're paying more for your deductibles, you're paying more for your co-pays and all those other things at the state level right now. So we actually have a pretty fair deal for our employees at this time, even though it continues to go up. We're also looking at an increase in our multi-line rates and our workers' comp rates. So all that being said, that's my biggest frustration when we look at budgets. And it always seems to be out of our control and the increases fluctuate so greatly. It's frustrating. Those are reoccurring expenses. They're tied directly to our personnel. And as much as we want to give raises to our personnel and be able to really improve their take-home pay, we're always faced with these issues that not only are they faced with, but we are as the county to cover the majority of those increased costs. Roughly, whatever a person makes, there's about a 30% increase to that the county covers on their behalf. And so I know there's a lot of concern that we don't pay as well as we other entities in town, but our benefits really are top-notch in that sense, and we really are providing a huge benefit to our employees. So that being said, we'll continue to look at how to keep those costs down, but it does affect our budgeting, and it hurts. I don't like to give insurance companies money. I'd rather give it to our employees and our staff, but that's the environment that we're in right now. And so the initiatives that we put out, the health fairs, those things are very important for our employees to participate in because all of those do help bring down rates. And so that's why we really encourage that. We encourage the commission to be part of that. The biometric things, the open enrollment is important for you to get your questions out there and answered. And so just wanted to inform the commission of that. It's always frustrating to see those potential rates going up. And a quick update on our county attorney search timeline. We did have the opening close on Friday. We had 5 applicants. We reviewed the applicant pool on Monday morning, and we'll look at what how many of those we may schedule interviews for. We're going to start doing some of the preliminary reference checks, and we'll reach out to the commission with timelines on that. So we're moving on forward with that.
Mr. Chairman, who are the individuals?
Excuse me?
Who are the individuals?
I don't have their names right. We'll share that with the commission. Yeah, we'll definitely. Not all of them will even be qualified for an interview. We had one individual, I can't remember the name right off, who just passed the bar a few months ago. So, he doesn't meet the minimum qualifications in that context. So we'll share that with the commission. I don't have that for them.
Mr. Chairman, what will the interview process be like?
We're still working out those details. We're still working out those details on how the interview process will go forward, so we'll share that with the commission as we go forward. So by our meeting on December 5th, we'll have something for the commission to look at and approve. I would like to open up the questions to all of our elected officials, though. I think all our elected officials should be able to at least have an input and questions that they would like to ask this county attorney, the assessor, the clerk, the treasurer, our sheriff. All of them do interact quite a bit with our county attorney, so we find it important that we solicit from them their questions and concerns, maybe from past interviews and stuff like that. So I am going to reach out to them as well as some of our department heads that have a lot of interaction with the county attorney.
So will the commission be part of that interview process?
Would the commission like to be part?
Well, I know we were last time.
Okay. I would like to see if we do the commission as part of it, all of the commissioners participate, or the commission choose their designees in an open meeting. So on December 5th, we'll put that out there for a decision. If the full commission will participate, or they're going to choose designees as well.
I certainly believe that it's the entire commission that should be part of the process, Mr. Chairman.
I will be part of that.
Okay, well, we'll definitely look at that and bring it back on the 5th for decisions.
And our sheriff.
Well, and that's kind of the can we open. If we invite the sheriff, we should definitely invite the clerk, the treasurer, our assessor. I think that's the fair way to approach this. If we're going to have, we can't have just one without having them all. All of our electeds do work with the attorney in one aspect or another. Okay, and then the last thing I would have for you today, commissioners, I left a packet on each of your desks. This was a letter, some correspondence we received a little while back from the Don Fernando, the Taos land grant. And I had brought it to the commission sooner because I needed to be able to talk with Mr. Skip Trujillo about some of the history. There's a lot of history that goes with this, and I think Commissioner Romero may be the most informed because he was part of the commission back in 2001 when this kind of started. And so I left you all the information that was provided by Mr. Trujillo for you guys to review. I wanted to bring it to your attention. It came to us, and this is a formal request. In my discussion with Mr. Trujillo, we thought it may be a good idea to have a work study or a discussion with the full board about the history of it, what steps they've taken as a land grant, and what they're looking to kind of achieve and what they're really asking the commission for. But in the face of it, they're asking for us to return to them what they feel is their property at the county plaza, the county-owned Taos Plaza, and the county historic county courthouse.
And Mr. Chairman, I guess what I would like to see out of this document, this letter, is that our attorney review this and give us an opinion. I mean, who would we deed the old courthouse to? Just Mr. Trujillo himself? Who else is involved with that board? I understand it's just him that's pretty active with it.
Actually, just Skid and I think would be the...
He mentioned 4 active members. He didn't give me the list of all 4 of them, but that's what he mentioned, that we have about 4 active members.
Interesting to see that end of it as well, Mr. Chairman.
I did mention to him the idea of, that we're moving on the courthouse. We're putting a lot of effort, time, and we're going to put a lot of money into the courthouse. So I just set that expectation with him that certainly we take ownership of that building. The county does, and the county is moving forward with improving it because we do take ownership of that.
The county owns the plaza also.
Yes.
As you indicated earlier.
So thank you for that advice, Commissioner Romero, and that suggestion. I do appreciate that. This is a lot more history than I have available to me, so I am trying to go back in time a little bit, get as many different perspectives and those that were involved from the beginning of this. It does seem like they've been pursuing something for quite a while, and they're not going to just give up on it. So I want to make sure that we have a good...
In fact, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see this on our next executive session for discussion.
Okay. All right. That's all I have today. Is that for any other questions of the commission?
Commissioner Blackburn.
Yeah, just one quick one. When might we hear more about the tracking devices and how that's progressing?
So the next meeting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is in January. So after we take it from the subcommittee to that full committee and we get their suggestion and input, I'd like to bring it back to the board with all of their suggestions and discussion on it so that you know that all of the stakeholders have kind of put some input into it. This is bigger than just the county. Even though the county does touch it in so many different departments, it does need the judges to be involved. It does need even the nonprofits and all the support around the community to know what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. I think that's the best way to get the right money.
That's great. And then the funding on that, is that through grants or?
We would actually probably be able to take the funding that's already been budgeted for the third-party contractors we paid and use some of that, the savings that we would get from not having to pay the third-party contractor, we would be able to put into this process. So what's very interesting about it, though, is they have full tracking of capability. So you can pay a little extra per device, and all of the actual tracking of a GPS monitor and all these blips and points is done in Houston. They're doing all that background work. They alert us when the parameters we set forth to them are violated. And so it really does make it a lot easier for the county to react quickly. And like I said, if it's an immediate concern like a domestic violence violator, they would go straight to dispatch. Dispatch could control that call and dispatch law enforcement immediately. And it saves probably time from that third-party intermediary being called and having to make the call themselves.
Great, look forward to it sometime next year. Thanks.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to congratulate you for getting that deed from DOT and what hard work that must have been. That's a big step. We can move forward with getting affordable housing now. When will that be recorded? And then someone has to write a contract to give the land to the town with a reversionary clause? Or no reversionary clause? I mean, is that the next step? I just wanted to congratulate you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the next step is to sit down with Mr. Dulles and look at the timeline the town has on that project. We are working on, we have to relocate our fleet department still, so Mr. Hottoville has been working with Facility Bill to get an idea of what Operations Center would look like, the cost, the size, and those kinds of things, because we really need those hard numbers for us to take that next big step to get us out of Herndon. So now that we have the title, that's a big step, but we're still working on where we go to. And so on Landfill Road, we've done a lot of improvements to that property already. We put power out there. I think we put up a gate recently. And so the next step is to design the building and know what the cost is going to be. And that way we can proceed in that direction. So they're moving forward on the deed. I'll have a better timeline at the next meeting.
So is it possible, it just seems like that road yard out by the airport is such a long way. Is it possible to look at other land that might be available in town? It's just the proximity. That just seems like such a long way to put a fleet department out there. So is that a possibility to look at land in town or in close by?
It's always a possibility. The advantage to that piece of property out there was there was no cost to it. We got that from the town with no cost. So the cost of a piece of property closer to town certainly has a higher premium to it. I doubt we're going to get a donation of a quality piece of property for that. So we can continue to look for that, but at this time, to be able to move out of Herndon expeditiously and meet all our time frames, it looks like that probably is the best location for us.
How much land is available on the west?
How much land? They gave us 5 acres. We are going to request more. If we're going to put
Up to 10.
yeah, I think they have a lot of land. The town has a lot of land contiguous to where we are. So
What's accessible, I think, is 10 total, if I remember right.
yeah, so we were going to request an additional 5 acres. That would give us the ability to put solid waste, fleet, and public works all on there. And they could go and have the space.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, as far as the old armory building and property, we're looking at selling this or after we consolidate everything, or?
We haven't made that decision yet. I need to bring that to the board. There's a lot of ideas out there. I'll tell you, there's a lot of ideas, a lot of requests, a lot of different thoughts about it. So I can't say we made that decision or I even have a good recommendation for you at this time. But options are unlimited, from everything from using it as public safety, fire, economic development, selling it, donating it for economic development and or affordable housing. I mean, there's a lot of options. The building is structurally sound. We did a full OSHA walkthrough last year, I believe, and we addressed all the small issues and small concerns. The facility continues to improve things like the bathrooms and heating and cooling. So the building has some value to it. As we complete the storage for the clerk's voting machines, she'll vacate that space and we'll have more space out there as well. And so, yeah, there's going to be plenty of options, but I can't tell you I have a suggestion for you yet. I need more input from the board and all of the community that might be able to maximize that space.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
guess just quick, if the town were to move and the RFP gets reissued by January, and we had to move sooner than when the facility would be built, would we just move fleet to the armory temporarily?
Probably, and that is really, there's a lot of moving parts here. So having the senior building complete with the clerk's storage area would give us a little bit of opportunity to find it, but it's not ideal.
Time out.
Right. We're going to have to ask for the time we need and part of all of this.
We'll have the senior building and the voting machine storage area by next November. And I think it'll take us the same time frame to build fleet and new building, and that started in March, April. So it's never going to time out well without a new piece of land. And we still also have to drill a well out there as well, too, so.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my understanding is the town has proceeded with what they need to do in order to qualify for this year's tax subsidy. You know, it's not a sure thing, but I think that it's actually moving well. But even once that deadline is met, there's still at least another year before you end up breaking ground. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving along to item 13, any new business to be considered at a future commission meeting, commission, other than what we've already stated, restated, and stated again.
Mr. Chair, for possible new business to be considered for a commission meeting, is it the will of the commission, a manager that we are going to use, Mr. Attio, in any potential EPA meetings that will be coming down? As early as we have one December 8th, we'll be hosting in Cuesta. So I don't know if that's something that we can consider looking for new business.
What time December 8th?
I think it's going to be, something in the morning for elected officials and public participation in the evening. Nothing's been set in stone yet, so it's still kind of being messed around, but I'd like to see if we're going to end up having, what kind of legal representation we'll be looking for, if any, through this EPA share run process. There's going to be work that'll be coming out on basically the county's jurisdiction lines, so I think that we should start having more participation, which we had with Ms. Baker. So if we as a commission can make a decision whether we're going to use the firm that's contracted right now, or if we're going to have 3 separate contracts with an attorney here in the house. We have already one with the top of the world, and we have another one with environmental. We do also, just for, I'll use it as part of my announcement as well, on November 8th, we have the National Resource Trustee and Mexico Environmental Department doing a public hearing on some of the projects that are potentially being proposed for work that would be in and around the Cuesta area. There was a $4 million settlement that they need to go through the process and get public participation, so I think that any commissioners that feel they want to go listen in would be good. In addition to that, you guys all saw that announcement with the TA program for displaced miners. They do have the office that will be once a week in Cuesta at the village chambers, but they can also, any miners that have been around in that time that were displaced could also call Workforce Solutions. They don't have to be miners from Cuesta proper, but they can be from as far as Mora to Peñasco, here in Taos, all the way to San Luis Valley, that they would be able to get retrained in either a trade or go back to school of some kind. So you can pass that word out to your constituents in the area. I would appreciate that. We need to get at least, try to get at least 100 to qualify and sign up so that the money can kick in. If not, then we'll lose that money.
And you'll let us know time on those meetings?
I'll let you know time on those meetings, but I'd like to ask the commission to consider having staff, or we look for legal representation as projects are starting to come around in the Cuesta area, and things are moving up in my district.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gallegos, I appreciate that coming up. I kind of been thinking about that myself and wanting to ask the board how we could proceed, maybe with an RFP or something for specific representation on EPA matters. There are different attorneys out there that specialize in things like that, and that may be the best use of our resources is to just RFP and find specific representation. And I certainly appreciate more input from the board on that, but that's something I've kind of been exploring as well, moving in that direction. So we obviously couldn't get that done and completed by the December 8th meeting, so I'll have an offline conversation with Mr. Audio and see if he can give me some recommendation as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Now, Jim, what would the role of our attorney be in that, in those proceedings, and would it overlap roles of other attorneys already involved?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Blankenhorn, I see the role being kind of an advisor as well as, tackling any of the major issues. So there are different firms out there that specialize in environmental. If we were to reach out specifically to them, I think I could put, with the help of Mr. Audio, put together a scope of work that we bring before the board to review, of course, but that would give us not just the legal representation, but someone that can maybe do a bit of an analysis of the ROD, the consent decree, tell us where we may be exposed and what issues that we should probably be most concerned with. And I think that would help, certainly me as management, help suggest to the full board how to proceed in this issue. So I keep leaning toward environmental attorney because they do have that experience, and I feel like that would give us a broader ability to address all these issues, but it may not be an attorney we need, so I still need to look at that further as well.
What recourse would we have if we disagreed with something in the ROD? And I'm still curious about who else, what other attorneys are doing these analyses and whether or not we can use any of their work.
Well, one thing I've heard is to find an attorney that's really well versed in the process, that understands all of the procedures, process, the permitting, and we don't necessarily need to fight everything. If we have concerns, there's different ways to look at an approach to addressing the issue that doesn't necessarily require litigation, but knowing that they understand the process and can educate us on those processes and ways to maybe use the process to our advantage or to as leverage. That's kind of the conversations I've had with a few different options, and so that's what I'm looking at, someone that can help us in that aspect to give us advice and give us direction that isn't necessarily litigious all the time.
Commissioner Blinkenhorn, over the course of the past 4 or 5 monthly meetings, Chevron has been working with EPA and NMED, Mining Minerals Division, in tweaking some of the record decisions. Because they're doing that, I think as a county, we need to step up and start putting our foot down one way or another, whether you believe that the record decision is closed and it's not going to be opened again. But these are things that are being discussed in these monthly meetings that I think county presentation, by having legal counsel presentation, can help get the county's concerns up to speed so that EPA and Environment Department know what's going on, because there are things that the village requested us doing. They have legal counsel, but that is legal counsel that is advising the village requester through a different process and understanding some of that stuff. But that paperwork isn't going to be, the village requester is not going to, and those attorneys are not going to be doing extra work to help the county. I think the county needs to be there because they have their own concerns. So I think it's an important issue that we need to address to kind of get our feet back at the table. We're sitting at the table right now. Now we can have a voice, and I think with some legal consultation, we will participate a little bit more. Plus, I think there's things that are starting to unfold. In my capacity, not knowing anything about the legalities, I think that there needs to be that there. I can't really sit as a mayor and as a commissioner and try to speak on both behalves, so I think it's important to have some kind of legal counsel there.
Is the village request able to be at the table with those negotiations that are tweaking some of the provisions of the ROD?
They are sitting in, they're being very active with it. And I think they're being heard. There's been some steps that have been taken, a few steps back, and some processes that EPA and now the Environment Department are having to reconsider, because when this record decision was put together, it was put together with the mind that was in operation. Now that there's closing and there's been language that is not filling for Chevron's benefit, they're willing to change the record decision and some of the consent decree. So if they're going to do that, I think that the county and the village both can sit in and participate and bring that out again. So that's kind of where I sit as a county benefit out of it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, any other?
I just want to add to that. There was at one point, we had a proposed contract by a particular Colorado attorney. Maybe if we could pull that document and at least use some of that language for an RFP scope of work, include RFPs to extend into Colorado. That would, I think, be helpful. But we did at one point, we did have a contract to that effect, and it never happened. So if we could find that, I think we were all given copies of it. That might help with scope of work language, and also maybe reaching out to that particular law firm as well as other ones that specialize in that kind of environmental law. So thank you. And Mr. Chairman, the only thing I want to announce is please, it is detention center inspection time. I'd like this to be done before our last meeting in December so that we can have a report to present to the public. So please mark your calendars to go inspect the jail. And then, Mr. Cordova, do you want us to notify you so you can go with us? Can we just go in and arrange it with Nelson? Is there a preference you have?
If you'd include me in your correspondence with Nelson and I have the ability to go join you, I'd like to join.
Okay.
I probably won't join all of you on your each tour, but I'd like to take one or two of the tours as well.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner? Okay, moving on to item 14. Entertain a motion to adjourn until we have our work study, which starts at 1 p.m.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
See everybody at 1.